Welcome back to Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Kretschmer from McHenry County College Police. He has 37 years experience in law enforcement. So I'm really looking forward to diving into his wealth of knowledge and insights. So welcome to the show, Chief Kretschmer. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Paige. Thanks for having me.
Did I say your name right the second time?
No,
We
it's
said this, so anyone listening, I said this before and then I said it again. I was like, I don't think I said that right the second
uh,
time. It's
oh,
Kretschmer.
Kretschmer. Yes, very good.
Thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. I wanted to maybe give a little bit of background on you and what those 37 years, I know you're in your 37th year right now. So what does your career look like so far?
So I did my first 28 with Crystal Lake Police Department in Illinois. I started as a community service officer, which was a civilian position. Became patrolman. Worked my first 8 years on the street, and then I got assigned to the schools, and I did that for another 8 years. I came out of the schools. And then they made me the training person, and I think we're gonna talk about this a little later. They asked me to write a 5-year plan for the training division. And I was next on the sergeant's list, so I wrote a rather ambitious plan, and then they promoted me to sergeant, and then eventually made me the training sergeant, so I ended up implementing the plan I wrote. I became commander of operations, and then that's the position I retired at. And then I came here to the college, started as a patrolman, became a sergeant. And then when the original chief to the police department retired, they made me chief. So,
That's amazing. And I know that when we talked offline, you've said that your career, you've trained everything under the sun. So you've trained, communication, how to talk to people. I think you said that you trained defensive tactics, everything under the sun.
yeah.
What is the key to being an effective trainer?
Um, uh, Personally, I think the biggest key is put yourself in the student's seat.
Mm,
So before you teach them anything, look at the classroom setup or the, defensive tactics room setup wherever you're at, and look at it from a student to make sure they're in an environment that's conducive to learning. The other part is you have to know or pick up on how people learn.
mm,
And something I didn't tell you that I have a master's degree, and the minor part of my master's degree is in education. So I did a
okay.
lot of uh, stuff with cognitive development and how adults learn. Um, so so I always took that into account when I was training people. Gender is another thing you have to take into consideration. Um, there are differences between men and women, so you have to understand those physical differences because if you look at how a female carries her weapon, it sticks out a little bit more. That's not for any other reason than they have wider hips than men do.
Right.
So it's a biological thing. They can't control it. We can't control it. But it becomes key when you start to teach weapon retention because some of the techniques that work for men aren't very effective techniques for our women. So we have to adjust those techniques to work for them. So there are a lot of considerations when you're doing training, and the more you can make ahead of time to alleviate stress on the student, and the student concentrates on the material or the technique and truly learns, that makes it a more effective, and I think for the most part, more enjoyable training environment for the students.
I love that you mentioned how people learn and adapting to that as the teacher. Because I think if you look at what is the goal is that people learn, right?
Yeah,
You don't want to be up there as a teacher, as a trainer, doing all these things and then no one gets it. So
yeah,
having that ability and that adaptability as a trainer to say, hey, like I know that, and I know that this saying is maybe really old school, and I don't even know where it came from, but I think everyone will get it. You know, that old saying of like, there's 100 ways to skin a cat.
Yeah,
You know, like you should, as an effective teacher, be able to explain these things in 100 different ways, right? So that you can make sure that the person who is absorbing that information is actually understanding.
correct. And this is an oversimplification, but some people need the visual. Some
Hmm.
people actually need to hear it. Other people actually have to physically do something to attach it to that learning. Um, and it could be as simple as flipping their pen. I've been in a class where the student was flipping his pen the whole time. And I equate that to, I remember the fidget spinners that were really big for a while.
Yeah.
That was how he was able to concentrate. That physical skill allowed him to pay better attention while I was speaking. So I didn't say boo about it. I just let him flip his pen all day. It didn't bug me at all. So, and if it helped him learn better, that's an advantage to everybody then.
Yeah. Well, I love that because I think that we sometimes get caught up in our own perceptions of things. And I love that you took a moment and said, this might be the way that the person learns instead of being like this person's being annoying or not
Yes.
paying attention because I think that you could easily have thought that like, oh, this person is just not engaged or they're annoying me and therefore like I don't want them to do that. But for you to take a step back and be like, you know what, this might be actually the way that they are able to stay engaged and to be present. I think that that takes a lot of awareness and skill to step outside of yourself.
So, yeah, you got to make it about the student. If it's about you as the instructor, you're not going to transfer the information you need to transfer.
Yeah,
So,
100%. Have you seen a difference in generations in how younger people learn versus older people, or maybe younger officers who don't have as much experience versus, older officers who maybe have 20 years of experience? Have you noticed a difference in generations?
yes. And I'm going to be honest with you. I actually took a class on dealing with younger officers because I was struggling with how they approached the job.
Mm.
And so, in my current position, I'm as the chief here at the college. I hire retired officers, so I'm dealing with older, more experienced people. But when I was with Crystal Lake, as I became the, I guess, elder statesman, if you want to call it that, with the younger generation, I truly struggled because they didn't want to work overtime. They only wanted to be there when they absolutely had to be there. And that made no sense to me when I was a young guy, scooped up all the overtime I could to help my family financially and everything. And what I learned over time is they work for their life outside of work, as
Mm.
opposed to my generation and probably the generation before mine. We worked to support our families and try to get as financially ahead as we could. Um, and work came first before a lot of things. Um, and the younger generation doesn't approach it that way. I'm not saying that's bad.
You're like, let
Um,
me be clear.
so, you hear a lot about work-life balance, and I'm going to be blunt. I think that the younger generation has done a better job of work-life balance than our generation did. So they're not missing, a lot of family events or um, you know, important things in their life because of work, where my generation, and I think the one before me, if work called and it was your kid's birthday party, kissed your daughter in the head, said, I'll see you when I see you because I have to go.
Right.
Uh, and they're they're much more devoted to that balance, which I think in the long run will prove to be healthier,
Yeah.
a long-term health standpoint.
Yeah.
So,
And I've heard similar things, and I think that there's always going to be varying opinions on, is it good, is it bad? But I do agree with you that if there's more of a prioritization, because one of the biggest pieces of advice that I hear across the board from individuals like yourself who have been in the career a long time, who are in leadership, say like, I wish I would have prioritized my family more, or like, make sure that are there for your family and you have a group of people outside of the job that, keep you grounded and, try to keep those friends, try to like keep that strong bond with your family. And so I think that in that context, that's really positive. If you have someone who comes into the career saying, my family is a priority and I want to make sure that I'm there as much as I can be. I do hope that that will translate into, um, you know, a, a decrease in what we're seeing in the divorce rate and things of that nature.
Yes. And you brought up divorce rate. I think I'm again probably unusual. Been married to my wife for 37 years.
Amazing.
She hasn't left me yet. Um, but you have to work at it. It's
Mm.
not, you just can't hope it will work out. When my wife's annoyed with something I do, she's more than happy to tell me. Now I say that kind of humorously, but we have discussions. We don't, get any yelling matches. We just, okay, this is an issue for you. How do we work past this?
Yeah.
And you funny, if you ask my daughter, she'll say, I've never heard you or mom scream at each other. My daughter's 28 now and married and in her relation of her own. I goes, that's because we don't. We talk it out and come to a solution that will work.
Yeah.
So,
I think that all things in life, I should say all things, most things in life are hard. And especially the things that are worthwhile are hard. It doesn't just come easy and it does take effort. And I've heard this expression before and I really like it. It's like choose your hard. Like working out is hard, but being unfit is hard too. Like, you know, focusing on your mental health is hard, but having a mental crisis is hard too, So it's like choose your hard. And I really like that because it's like, would you rather work on your relationship to make it stronger, or not? Because those are both hard. Getting a
yeah.
divorce is hard. Working on your relationship is hard. They're both hard. Choose your hard. So I try to have that mentality sometimes because I do think that sometimes that's where the thought process ends is like, oh, well, this is just hard. It's like, okay, but the other side of that fence, is also hard too.
Or
So which one would you prefer? And you have to make those decisions in life, which hard you want to choose. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how you said we communicate and we're able to get through these things. And we've never had, these scream out arguments and we're
yeah.
able to, effectively, get through it. You and I had talked about, the importance of communication skills on the job, to de-escalate and to avoid, some of those things happening out on the streets, to avoid maybe some hands-on altercations. How do you think? Because I think it goes hand in hand. Like you have those skills that you have done on the streets and you've also taught that now you're able to go back home and also have that same like, okay, we're going to talk about this effectively. How important do you think communication is for de-escalation in general?
In general, it's huge. Um, from even from how you approach it. One of the things I do with people who are upset, or even my wife when she wants, first thing I have them do is sit down. And they don't realize I'm having them sit down for a purpose.
Mm.
When you sit, it causes your breathing rate to return to normal, even because when you get upset, your breathing rate tends to increase.
Yeah.
That helps them calm down, and it's much more effective if you there can be calm and explain what the issue is than if they're upset and try to explain what the issue is. So in police work, we don't have the luxury of, you know what, you're pretty upset now. Why don't we take a break and And we'll come back to it in an hour or two after you had a chance to calm down and then we can talk rationally.
Right.
Uh, so in your relationships, you can probably do that, but on the street, that's not an option. So to physically put them in a position where they start to breathe normally and relax a little bit without them realizing that's what's going on, I think is key to successful. But also the words you choose, how
Mm,
you approach them. Um, they want to feel like they're listened to. One of the things I say with people who are very upset to me, I want to listen to what you're saying, but if you're screaming at me, I can't really process what you're saying.
yeah.
So if you could calm down a little bit and talk to me, I can listen to what you're saying and hear what you're saying. Um, and that works a lot of the time. Um, and then, you really, most people just want to feel they've been heard. You don't
Mhm.
have to agree with them. You don't have to like what they say. But if they feel they've been heard, you can generally resolve the situation without it going to physical force. Not always, there's
Yeah.
always those
Mm.
exceptions. But a lot of the time you can do that just simply by them feeling like you heard what they were trying to say.
Yeah. I actually really like what you said about trying to bring the breathing rate down, and putting them in a position where that happens automatically without them knowing it. Um, there's something that I learned really early on, and it's something I try to teach still to this day, but the mind follows the breath, right? So if your breath is erratic, your mind is erratic. If your breath is calm, your mind will be calm, right? So your mind follows your breath.
Yeah,
And then the same goes for your actions and your reactions, right? So your actions and reactions are going to follow the mind. So again, if your breath is calm, your mind is calm, then your actions and your reactions are going to be more controlled, more calm. If your breath is erratic, your mind is erratic, then the way you respond and you're acting towards things are going to be more erratic. So I love that you said, I start with just trying to get that breathing to come down a little bit, and then that helps everything else that follows.
yeah. And at least in my experience, it's worked quite well over the years.
Good. Yeah,
So,
no, I appreciate that. So you said, and we laughed about this offline too, but you said that you wrote a 5-year plan and you did not think that you were going to have to implement this. So you were like, I'm going to shoot for the stars and I'm going to make this really robust training plan. And you were then promoted and they're like, okay, put it into action. What experience did you have with that? The um, experience of maybe like dreaming up something that you were like, this will never ever be in place, but this is all the things that I would like to do, to then implementing it and making it a reality.
um, the biggest chunk of that plan was to create in-house instructors in various areas.
Mhm.
So we didn't constantly have to send our people away to training. We were doing it uh, at our facility. Um, and that takes time. You have to pick who you want to be the instructors. One of the reasons I have taught everything from verbal judo all the way through firearms is I had, as a supervisor of that, I had to know what every instructor was doing. So I was an instructor in most of that myself. So that was a big chunk of it, is to um, you know, make sure we're getting the guys the training they need to be successful on the street. Um, in Illinois, de-escalation is huge now. It's required training. So we built de-escalation into not just our policies, but our training in Crystal Lake before it became required by law, I guess is the best way to put it. And when I came here, the first thing they did is they gave me all the training stuff to do as the patrolman here at the college. So I was just back in the training seat and did a lot of the in-house stuff here myself because I was already certified to do that.
Mm.
Um, and when I became a commander, I didn't give up my certifications because I enjoyed training. I'll tell you a funny story in a second after I finish this thought. I think the key to making that 5-year plan work, it wasn't about me doing all the training. It was me developing our people to do the training. So they're peer-to-peer training as opposed to somebody above them telling them this is how it has to be.
Mhm.
So I think that's probably what made that plan as ambitious as it was, as effective as it was, because patrol guys said, hey, I want to be a baton trainer. All right, let's send you to school and then you can start doing baton training in-house. And so they felt like they were advancing their career and it was giving us a skill set that the department needed. So,
Yeah. And
so
your
the
funny
funny
story.
story,
Yeah, I want to
yes.
hear it.
So as the training sergeant, I was in charge of the FTO program. One of my FTOs called in sick one day. So I'm like, I don't have a lot on my calendar today. I'll be the FTO. But I was certified FTO. So started riding with the guy. We got a traffic crash, simple traffic gas. This guy's in his ninth or 10th week, well off along that. And from his DORs or daily observation reports, he was doing fine. So he just kept messing up and messing up and messing up, taking this crash report. And I'm not use the officer's name, but I go, what's going on? I've read your DORs. You're well beyond having trouble with this. It's you. And I go, what do you mean it's me? He goes, I'm not used to having a sergeant who's in charge of the whole program sitting in the car next to me. I'm used to having, another patrolman in the car next to me. And I go, well, for today, I'm just a patrolman. I go, I understand what you're saying. I go, I should have addressed that at the beginning of the shift. That's on me. I go, I'm just the FTO today. I'm not the sergeant. I'm not gonna do anything different than if it was your regular FTO. And he was fine after that.
Yeah.
But,
It made him
I
nervous.
it made him nervous because, I'm the guy who at the end of it decides, do we keep him? Do we let him go?
Yeah.
And he was not ever in danger of being let go. He's actually a sergeant now. So I mean he's had a good career and he's a great officer. But that one little thing that I should have probably addressed right at the beginning of the shift, not thinking about it, um, made him nervous because the head of the FTO program was riding with him that day.
Yeah, that's too funny. I could see that. I could see you being like, "Oh my gosh, the boss is here and I got to
Yeah,
perform and I'm really nervous." And, we know through different personality types, we kind of talked about this earlier, some people really thrive under that pressure and some people don't. And so I love that that was maybe a learning experience for you too, moving forward of, being able to address that now before someone maybe gets too nervous about it.
exactly. Yeah, no, and I didn't even think about it before then. So
I
I
I
had,
honestly I love that we learn from those things though. I think that there's so many things that you don't think of because we have our own tracks of thinking. And it's those moments where it's an opportunity to grow and to learn. And so I think that, and that obviously that was a very innocent, like funny
yeah,
thing that happened that you can learn from. But I love stories like that because especially if you have the awareness of like, oh, like I didn't even think about it and next time I will.
yeah,
I I I also wanted to kind of circle back because I think it's really funny that you're like, I'm gonna shoot for the stars, I'm gonna build out this program, and then you were then, asked to put that into reality. But the one thing that you said in the training program, it sounds to me like you were empowering people to, um, you know, increase their skills, to improve themselves, to strive to progress in their career. And I think that circles back to wellness. And, we talk about burnout and, people not having the ability to try different things and to kind of have that monotony of staying in the same assignment for too long. And so I did you or do you think that that impacted wellness to feel empowered to take on other training and to help other people in the organization?
I think so, but to actually to that point, I go back to when I was an SRO at the same high school for 8 years. And I did want to proceed in my career, eventually become a sergeant. Well, at least where I was at, if you were SRO, you're kind of out of sight, out of mind. And I was actually going to ask to get out of the program the year they told me I was going to get out of the program because I felt like I'm not going to get good consideration when the sergeant's opportunity comes around because I'm never around.
Yeah,
And I think to some extent, not having other people do that position, because I was the first one at that particular school and I did it for the first 8 years, there should be an opportunity for other people to get that experience. I became an extremely good interviewer because I was talking to people every day.
right.
And it wasn't always criminal incidents or anything like that. But when you're talking to teenagers every day, it gives you the opportunity to improve your interview skills. And so I think leaving somebody in the same position for too long can be very detrimental to that person, especially if they feel like I'm never going to go anywhere else in my career because of that.
Yeah.
So that becomes a point of frustration.
I can see that for sure. I
So
think it's human nature to want to feel like you're making forward progress. And if you have this position where you're like, man, I'm never ever going to improve, I'm never ever going to get an opportunity, I could see how that could put you in a challenging headspace for sure.
want it noted. I love that position. I still have
Mhm.
students that I had when I was an SRO reach out and talk to me. They bring their families to meet me at work events and stuff. So
I
it
love
was
it.
a great, great position to have. But more people should have that opportunity, I guess, is my point.
Yeah. No, I love that. I wanted to pivot a little bit and obviously we know wellness has evolved and adapted over the last 37 years. How has wellness evolved over time for you, or how have you seen it evolve in this career of policing?
Okay. So when I started, wellness was the thing.
Right.
You dealt with high stress situations. We didn't even brief them back then. The boss was like, rub some dirt on it and get back out there.
Yep.
Um, and that led people to find ways to deal with that stress. Some people worked out, some people drank, just depended on what that person's outlet was. I think I'm going to say early 2000s, people started to say, we deal with a lot of stressful situations. And we need to effectively give our folks a way to deal with that stress.
Yeah.
You talk about PTSD. Now they're doing studies on, I'm not going to get the name right, but it's multiple exposure PTSD.
Mm.
So one of the studies I read said the average person has 6 to 7 over their lifetime, where careers in law enforcement and the fire service, you have 700 to 800 over your career. Um, so learning how to effectively deal with that has come a long, long way. Before I left Crystal Lake, we had a policy in place, any high stress situation, death of an infant, those kinds of things, super bad car crash, there was always anybody who was at that scene or worked that scene had to go for, it was a group thing, so everybody could kind of get it out together. Um, Mental health professional would meet with them. So we've taken a step farther here in McHenry County. We have a countywide social worker program now. It's run through the sheriff's office, but each department has a social worker from the sheriff's office's social work program assigned to them. So it does cost me, I think it's $1,000 a year or something, but that's nothing for what. So they're there to help us with hard cases, but they're also there for us guys to talk to each other. You know, if one of the guys needs to get something off their chest and just needs to talk and process, the social worker takes it. They don't they don't have to go out to somebody they don't know. It's a more comfortable environment for them. Which when I started, if somebody brought the concept like that up, they would have got laughed out of the room.
Sure.
So I think we're doing better as a profession. I don't know if we're at where we need to be, but we're doing much better as a profession saying, okay, there are mental health issues and you have to address them as they go, or they simply just get worse until the helping that person becomes much more difficult.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
It does. And I think that it goes back to what we said before, like the idea is hopefully you learn from challenges and then we learn how to improve and be better over time. And it does start with that awareness. It seems to me that maybe, 37 years ago, there wasn't really that awareness or maybe that education, or people hadn't run those studies yet to see what that cumulative trauma does to an individual over time. And now there is that awareness and there is that education. And so there's an opportunity to learn and improve, as we move
Yeah.
forward. And I know I've heard this a few times and we kind of talked about this, you start to see what those unhealthy coping mechanisms are, or the results of not dealing with those things. And you had said, it used to be called going to church. I've
Yes.
also heard it called choir practice, where the way to deal with it is to go and drink. And we have obviously seen the impact of what that does. And we've seen, alcoholism become a challenge and a way to process those traumas and those experiences in maybe an unhealthy way. And then obviously we, have seen um, the numbers of death by suicide, and maybe individuals who didn't have the resources to be able to process those things. And I know that you had a personal experience with that, and I was wondering if you were willing to share maybe what that experience did to you, how that impacted you, and maybe how that's impacted the way that you move forward as a leader.
Yeah, I'll be happy to. So I have a friend from high school. We knew each other in high school, who went to work for another police department in Northern Illinois. Was involved in an officer-involved shooting. Was justified, but the person he shot was a young teenager, 13 years old. He was armed with a fully automatic submachine gun, so it wasn't like, it wasn't justified. Um, and he did not seek help. He was eventually cleared to come back to duty. But about a year after it occurred, he ended up killing himself. And the reason was he couldn't come to terms with the fact that he killed a child,
Mm.
despite it being justified and everything. Had I wished he had reached out to me? Yes. In fact, I had another friend of ours, we were on the wrestling team together. He called me up very concerned that I would feel that way too. And I've not been involved in an officer involved shooting, so I'm like, I don't know how I'll feel at that time. I go, but you know, we have to put things in place to help guys through that. That's even justified. It's not an easy process. So yeah, so I think we do more now than we used to do. I know from how we process officer involved shootings now, it's much better than in in the past. You know, we don't grab the officer and throw him into a room and start trying to do an interview. If you look at the cognitive studies, a lot of stuff out of use um, for science and that thing, their brain needs time to recover so they can have total recall.
Mm,
And if you try to do it too soon, they're not going to remember everything because their brain is still processing through
mm,
the trauma. So you have to, one, give them time to process what occurred. And then it's not as simple as saying, okay, we did your interview, get through the investigative process, and let's say they get cleared and everything's all good. There's still long-term mental health care they're going to need to help them process that for a long period of time. Because there'll be, I guess the West word to use is there'll be triggers that will cause them to have or relive that moment. And they need somebody they can go to help them process through those triggers so they can continue to be an effective, law enforcement officer for the rest of their careers.
yeah. What advice would you give to someone who is maybe struggling and is maybe afraid to raise their hand or to seek out the resources that are available to them?
It's been my experience, a lot of the officers who don't want to go seek out help, excuse me, is because they're concerned they'll immediately take them off the street and
Mhm.
not be able to do their jobs anymore. I don't have them in front of me, but there are several confidential ways, the 800 numbers that are geared towards law enforcement, to seek out mental health help in a private and confidential way, so they don't have to necessarily go through their employer's EAP. But even the EAP stuff is confidential unless you're homicidal, suicidal, or they have concern for your physical safety. So they don't go running back to your employer and saying, hey, this is what we talked about.
Sure.
And I think that's an educational piece. You have to make sure your officers know that they are entitled to get this help and it is confidential. I had to put the caveat as a chief, if
Mhm.
we send you as a boss for mental health evaluation, that's not always confidential. You have to check the laws in your state, because we're sending to determine whether you're fit for duty. But if you're seeking it out on your own, those rules don't apply, I guess is
Understood. Yeah,
so.
and my hope is that the more education, the more conversations, the more resources, then, you know, the less people have to suffer and struggle, and especially struggling in silence. And, the more empowered and they're going to be to reach for those resources and have the confidence that it is confidential and that it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to lose your job or be found unfit. So I'm hoping that the more conversations that we have like this, the more education, then the more people feel supported.
And to the chiefs out there who listen and watch, you have to create an environment where your guys know it's okay. If one of my guys said I have to go to EAP, I'd say, okay, I go. If you want me to know, you can let me know, but if you don't, that's between you and the EAP person. Um, it could be a family issue at home. It doesn't necessarily have to be work related. So I'm not so nosy or have a need to know what's going on in their personal lives to think that that I need to know everything. It's you as a chief have to be able to say, okay, go get your help you need. Let me
Yeah.
know if I can do anything for you.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. I'm gonna pivot one more time before we close out, but you retired and then you came back because you didn't have enough of the career. Um,
I
and
needed insurance, but okay.
oh, that's hilarious, actually. Um, but you retired, so you have that experience and what that transition looks like. And, I know through conversations that that can be a really daunting thing, that can be a really challenging thing. I've had lots of conversations where people are like, I don't really know what to do next, or, I feel like I'm losing my identity or, the camaraderie and the teamwork and all the things like, and I'm not going to be in the know. I don't know what's happening anymore. And so we know that that transition can be scary. It can be challenging for some. Um, How do you think that officers can prepare for that? And how do you think organizations might be able to make that transition easier?
First off, for the officers, have a game plan. I mean, okay, don't say, oh, I hit my 25, I'm leaving. Have an idea. And if your idea is, I want to try nothing for 6 months and see how it goes, that's okay. But then say, after 6 months, I'm going to reevaluate to see if I want to go back to work. Do I want to do something else? I've had people who come to me and said, I don't want to do anything police related. And I'm like, that's okay. A lot of our skill set transfers to, other areas. But I've also had them say, I've looked and the only thing I think I can do is police work. And I go, so, I hire retired guys for a reason. Number one, that they're experienced. Two, they know how to handle most situations that would arise here in a effective manner. But three is also, I'm giving them an opportunity to basically extend their career by 10, 12 years, get a small, because they don't do the whole time, but they get a small pension. And in Illinois, the state university retirement system has an insurance option in it. So they have the ability to have insurance when they decide, I'm going to hang up the gun belt for good, and I don't have to worry about whether I have insurance for my wife and myself.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing I say is have a plan. Don't just think I'm going to retire and figure it out, because you won't figure it out.
Yeah.
So also the other thing is have something to do. Now I'm going to go back to my wife, who often tells people, yeah, he's not good idle. I'm not looking for it when he decides to be done. And I've already decided when I'm done, I'm going to give it 6 months to try to do nothing. My hobbies, golf, fish, ride my motorcycle, whatever I decide. Um, and then after that, if I'm still not, as my wife would say, doing well, doing nothing, I'll find ways to volunteer or help the community. Or it doesn't always have, it doesn't have to be paid necessarily. We have a very decent program here in Illinois. So, I can find, a community organization that needs help or something.
Yeah.
Keep yourself active and busy. Don't go into it with, oh, I'm finally done. I'm gonna kick back on the lazy boy and do nothing. Because you've been a, I, I guess one of the best ways I like to do this is you've been going 100 miles an hour for 25, 30 years, and now you expect to go to 0 miles an hour.
Yeah.
And if you hit the brakes at 100 miles an hour, what do? You leave a whole lot of skid marks. So you need to slow it down to 50, maybe 25, maybe 10 before you decide to just say, okay, I'm not going to do anything anymore.
Yeah.
But
I like that advice of be proactive about it. Have at least a game plan on what you're going to do. And but I also think that you're right. Like all your, not all of your skills. Yeah, I would say all your skills are transferable. Like there are so many things that you can do with the skill sets that you have. But I do think, like you said, it takes a little bit of pre-planning and trying to figure out what that looks like for you. And it's really funny. I have conversations all the time where, you know, more times than none, I have the conversations of they're like, gotta get a job right now. Like I can't like, and it's like I need to exit on, you know, June 1st, and then I need a job on June 2nd. And I've had those conversations where I'm like, yeah, like it's okay if you want to work again, but like, what about giving yourself maybe like a vacation in between? Like, what if you didn't step in the next day? What if you gave yourself a 2 or 3 week vacation? And that could be at home with your family, like you said, fishing, golfing, like doing the things that you enjoy to do. Or maybe it is that you plan to go on a Europe trip with your friends or your family, for 3 weeks, a month, and just enjoy a little bit of peace and quiet before hopping right back in. And I do think that it is hard. I mean, I feel like I go 100 miles an hour too. I think it's the personality type that you like to do that, right? You like to be busy, you want to feel productive. And there's days where like I'll sit idle for, a couple hours and I'm like, I feel lazy. I gotta go. I feel bored. Like, what do I do? What do I do with my hands? And so, I think giving yourself permission and getting used to like the ability to just rest, enjoy, and then maybe you do something after the fact.
Yeah. So at my house on Sunday afternoons, I like to occasionally take a nap. So I tell my wife I'm gonna watch golf on the TV.
Mhm.
That's code for I'm gonna sit in this chair and take a nap. So,
Yeah.
I do like watching golf, but I occasionally I'll doze off. And this is recent. I didn't used to do this when I was younger, but at least there's something to be said for that Sunday afternoon nap where I kind of decompress and don't think about anything.
Yeah.
And I think it helps kind of set the rest of the week where I can go at my pace and say, okay, on Sunday I can relax a little.
Yeah. No, I like that reminder that it's okay to relax.
Yeah,
Especially if you're in a safe space to do so. Like
yeah.
you can shut it off. You don't have to be fully immersed 24/7. In fact, I would say that it's not healthy to be in that mindset 24/7. So how can you give yourself grace and opportunity to disconnect from the job and reconnect with your family or your interests or not doing anything at all? Just take a nap on a Sunday. I love it.
And I agree with you. You can't have your police mindset 24/7.
No,
It'll do a lot of damage over the years.
I agree. Well, I have one final question for you before
Okay.
we sign off for the day. What words of wisdom would you give to someone who's earlier in their career in the context of wellness? Maybe something that you wish you would have known or something that's helped you along the way.
I think what I would say is always at least once a week, make time for you, just to do what you want to do. And then also once a week, make time for the people who are important to your life. So your family, your friends. Um, and good example of this is Friday nights are date nights for me and my wife. We go out to dinner, we kind of talk about the week and how things are going. Um, and we do that religiously on Friday nights. That's our time together. I try not to talk about work because she doesn't like to hear about work. I learned that early on, which is
Mhm.
okay. But that way hey, how's your mom doing? How's your sister doing? I got four sisters and a brother, so my siblings doing. So we connect every Friday, just the two of us.
I love that advice. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate it so much. And that's all I have for you. But if there's anything I missed, I'll give you the floor to wrap it up. But again, I'm just so appreciative of you spending the last hour with me.
I think we covered everything we talked about beforehand, so I
I
think
do
we're
too.
good. So thank you
Good.
for having me.
Of course. We'll keep in touch for sure.
Okay.
Thank you.